Hi there. This is Frank Brill with another episode of the Enviro-Politics podcast. Let's get right to it. Hi, this is Frank Brill, editor of Enviro-Politics, with episode 22 of our Enviro-Politics podcast. We've got a great guest today, Nick DeRose of Langan. I know it as Langan Environmental Services, Langan Engineering. I think we'll start off by asking Nick, what are you guys calling yourselves today?
Well, we actually, thank you, Frank. The full, we'd like to just go by Langan, but that officially would be Langan Engineering and Environmental Services.
All right, that's great. Well, for the purposes of this call, we'll go by Langan to make it easy. But at any rate, Nick I've known him for a number of years. He's very well regarded in environmental circles specifically in New Jersey, because that's where most of my experience is. And his company is the same. I'm going to ask Nick, we're here to talk about a new field or something called emerging contaminants. And in fact, Nick and a few other folks are involved in a course that's going to be given next month in June at Montclair State University, and we're going to get to that. He's going to explain what that's all about and why this is an important new emerging topic and why some of you might want to attend that course. It's definitely a subject you're going to be hearing a lot more about in the future. There's lawsuits involved and other things. And I think that most people, when we start talking about it, will recognize the issue because it's been in the news a lot lately. But before we get to that, I'm just going to ask Nick, if you don't mind, first of all, thank you very much for giving us some time and appearing on the podcast today. And tell us a little bit about Langan and yourself, your history.
Thanks so much, Frank, and it's really a pleasure to participate in one of your iPod casts. Been a big follower of your newsletter and all the different forms of communication you put out there. It's a great service. So I have been in environmental consulting since the advent of ECRA. So some folks will know about when that is, a number of years ago. Working quite a bit in New Jersey and including in 2008, 2007 timeframe, was a key proponent of establishing the Licensed Site Remediation Professional Program and worked to establish the association, LSRP Association, had significant input in that legislative effort. So I've been following remediation in New Jersey for a long time. Langan has a strong environmental consulting group, and we also do land development and geotechnical foundation engineering, and work for a wide variety of business and industry and developers, solving those types of problems. So that's hopefully that gives you a good understanding of my perspective and the firm's background.
Wonderful. That's great. Now, okay, well, let's get right into the topic then of emerging contaminants. What does that mean, and why is this an important issue for the future?
Emerging contaminants, it's a concept that's been around for some time. Basically, relates to contaminants maybe that are out in the environment and become noticed by regulators, but have not yet had established standards and regulatory requirements promulgated associated with those contaminants. So an example of an earlier one in time, in the 70s actually, is uranium. So, the EPA started to become aware of uranium impacts associated with mining and other activities, and eventually established standards. So this has been part of the history of environmental regulation. Today, the reason why we've put this program together is because there's a great deal of attention around poly and perfluorinated alkyl substances. That's a mouthful, and we refer to them by the acronym PFAS, PFAS, and I'll talk more about them. There's been some other contaminants that have gotten notoriety in recent years, but these PFAS contaminants are extremely prevalent in the environment, we can talk about why they are of concern as we go on here.
Very good. I'll tell you my limited understanding of them so far, or experience with them, has been a number of news stories that relate to one of the products that use the chemicals that are used that we're talking about here. Years ago, when DuPont developed Teflon, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's one of the contaminants we're talking about. And
that is, yes.
Yeah, and it went into all kinds of commercial uses and household uses. For everything that doesn't stick. I understand it's even got in the back of the yellow sticky notes, stick pad notes, and here locally, and I say locally, in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, it also got into, or some parts of these chemicals were used in firefighting foam, and was used on military bases. And now that's, in some cases, got into the water supply, into the groundwater underneath the bases, and has moved off-site, and is posing a problem for people whose drinking water, has been reached by this material. So I think I'm correct in both those instances, am I not, Nick?
You are very accurate there in characterizing some of the predominant sources. And beyond that, the PFAS is also, water resistant. So it's used in many types of textiles, clothing, commercial products, personal care products, extremely prevalent in the environment. To date, the most obvious sources and focus of regulatory concern have been the primary manufacturers who at their manufacturing plants may have had these materials, and the Department of Defense and the facilities that had significant firefighting training grounds. And they use what is referred to as aqueous film forming foam, AFFF. And those foams are the ones that contain the PFAS compounds. In 2000, by 2010, I believe, U.S. EPA had made arrangements with the 8 largest manufacturers of these compounds, and they ceased production. So current firefighting foams and materials that used to use these PFAS compounds no longer do. So that's sort of the current status. Areas where there are a high dependence on groundwater supplies, places like Sweden, and where these compounds were used, are finding them showing up in numerous water supply wells. Not rural, Pennsylvania, here in Bucks-Montgomery County, has had a number of sites that have come to the fore with water supply wells near DoD bases. And so we're starting to see more indications of the prevalence of these compounds.
Now, you said that there's a sense they're still fairly new. The regulatory side of it has got to be somewhat difficult, because I'm going to ask you this directly. Has the EPA set standards yet? Or is it a case where states are doing it on a state-by-state basis? What's the current status of regulatory levels, safety levels set for these materials?
Yeah, and this is also a source of uncertainty and interest in these compounds, because you have multiple jurisdictions that are starting to establish criteria and standards using different methodologies. And so So let's speak to your question directly. As far as U.S. EPA has only proposed what is a non-enforceable health advisory level for a couple of these compounds. And that is the extent of what U.S. EPA has done to date. Now, they can, under an emergency action, compel work to be done if they identify these compounds in a contaminated water supply. And some states, a number of states are now taking action, including New York State and New Jersey. Pennsylvania has not so far. And so what happens, for example, in New Jersey, we've had the Drinking Water Quality Institute, which establishes drinking water standards, referred to as maximum contaminant levels, MCLs, start to do work on proposing some criteria for these compounds, a couple of these compounds. And then that work can in turn be used by the DEP remediation folks to establish groundwater quality standards. And they have not been consistent, and they haven't been consistent with EPA. So, for example, for a practicing LSRP or for a water purveyor or a responsible party that has had a discharge, it creates a good deal of confusion as to, well, which standard applies and trying to resolve that issue.
Mm-hmm. I assume that's one of the things you'll be reviewing in your course in June. Is the what are the standards and where and how they vary?
Thank you. Yes, we've designed this program. Again, it's it'll be at Montclair State on June 8th, and there's information available. I will look while we're talking to see if I can actually give a better address as to that on the web. But it's going to include a panel on regulatory review featuring Chloe Metz, who is from US EPA Region 2, Sandy Kreitzman, who is from the Drinking Water Quality Institute that I mentioned in New Jersey, and Dr. Barry Frasco, who is from the New Jersey Site Remediation Program. So folks can understand how each of these agencies establish their standards and what they mean.
Terrific. Nick, I'm going to save you the trouble looking that up because there's an easy way to find the information about the course, and that's to go to our Enviro-Events Calendar. It's folks, it's Enviro-Events Calendar, and we list all kinds of upcoming, as the name suggests, environmental events, forums, and seminars, and training sessions and whatnot. And you'll see under that date all the links to the program that you need to get there. So
I did see it there. Thank you for that remark.
Great. Now, Nick, let me ask you this, and I assume that your course will also look into this. How are there remedial techniques that are effective with these contaminants? I know we're not talking about one different type, and there probably are a variety, and maybe different ways of treating or containing them. What is sort of what is the state of the art at the moment in terms of remediation?
That is still developing. There are techniques that for treating particularly the PFAS compounds above ground, but one of the most cost-effective ways to treat groundwater contaminant plumes can be what we refer to as in situ, in ground, and there has not been much progress in that regard. The other challenge with these PFAS compounds is that they do travel very far. They're persistent in the environment, and they have toxicity that is deemed by the regulators at this point to be such that the remediation standards that are being talked about are in the part per trillion level.
Wow.
10 part per trillion, 14 part per trillion. We've never had to deal with compounds with those types of standards before. So the scale of these plumes, when you map them out to those types of concentrations, can be an order of magnitude or more greater than we've seen before. So there's still a lot of work to be done to find, the right treatment technologies to, begin to tackle this. And I think, the question is, do we need to revise our remedial view, our view to how do we solve these problems? Should we be, instead of thinking we can restore entire areas impacted by these plumes, having to focus more on point of use treatment and monitoring, rather than thinking we're going to be able to treat some of these plumes given the scale they are. Langan is, we have some research grant applications in through work that is sponsored by one of the research arms of the Department of Defense. And this is something we're working on a number of sites as well.
So emerging is really the appropriate term when we're talking about this these compounds, because not only emerging in terms of the standards, but also in the treatment. I know in Hoosick Falls, I was up there on vacation last year, passing through, and became aware of the problems there with the entire drinking water supply for the town was contaminated with these type of materials. And in that case, once there was a real big fight between the state health department and the EPA, and a lot of finger pointing back and forth on, who should have set the standards, who should have gotten in first and alerted people, so on and so forth. What it finally came down to is that they did, fortunately, they did have a treatment system they put into the public water supply, and it's basically, as I understand, just sort of a filter. And at least the last story I read said it was doing an effective job of taking the contaminant out of the drinking water. Now, of course, there's still the ongoing concern and issue for folks who have been drinking the water for many years as to what potential health impacts that would have for them. But at least in that case, there was a treatment. But it's like you said, I think that was a case where the water was all, what they were concerned about was the drinking water supply. And because it was being provided by the town to all the members of the town, and there was a filtration plant, they could put these filters on it and take care of the problem that way. But if you're just chasing a plume, it's got to be a real difficult situation.
Well, those are the methods that are being used. That's consistent with what I refer to as point of use treatment.
Right. And
it's just that is not particularly inexpensive or overly efficient for these compounds. And again, depending on the scale of the problem, that may not always be the most desirable solution.
Mm-hmm. Well, like we said, it's an emerging field, huh? Well, Nick,
all senses.
Yeah, I don't want to take up too much of your time today. I know you have other obligations, and we appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else you'd like to add about the course on June 4th? Did you say? Let's see, what was that? June 8th. I'm sorry, June 8th. Yeah, June 8th at Montclair State University, and I can say that I have some information on it in front of me, and the registration starts at 7:30. The course runs pretty much all day long. You got closing remarks at 4 p.m. and as you mentioned, a number of really good panelists will be participating in this. Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, thank you, Frank. That does a real good job. I'll just make the point that in addition to the regulatory session, we do have a technical session where we'll go through the different aspects of what we've been talking about in terms of challenges of treatment and understanding these compounds. And it will not just be PFAS, it will be emerging contaminants in general. We have stakeholder perspectives, and we're going to have also a legal panel with attorneys from New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. I will mention that New York State recently passed, I think it's called Clean Water Infrastructure Bill, I apologize if I didn't get that quite right, but it's a precedent-setting, significant bill that will fund remediation on these projects in New York State and will be passed as part of the governor's budget. So it's an extraordinary action that Governor Cuomo took to see that these sites and impacts are addressed in New York State. And I think we're going to be seeing more of that across the country.
Oh, that's terrific. Well, Nick, we do appreciate your time today, and best of luck with the program in June and with your continued environmental work and Langan's work in New Jersey and beyond. And that's it, folks. We're going to wrap up right here with that. And Nick, one last thing: if people wanted to reach out to you or to your company, how would they best reach you, get you?
Yeah, well, I will certainly be able to respond to any emails, and the email is initial my first name, that is N, my last name, DeRose, DEROSE, at Langan, LANGAN.com. Other than that, we're on the World Wide Web, and hope to see some folks on June 8th.
Terrific. Thanks again, Nick. We'll see you.
Thank you, Frank.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for today's show. But we want to remind you that if environmental issues, news, legislation, and regulations in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, and Delaware are important to you, check out our daily newsletter, Enviro-Politics. That's one word, Enviro-Politics, capital E, capital P. You can receive the newsletter free for 30 days. You'll find us at enviropolitics.com. I think you'll also enjoy our Enviro-Politics blog. Just Google it. The same goes for our Enviro-Events Calendar. Just Google Enviro, add a hyphen, Events Calendar. Thanks for listening and for reading. See you next time.